Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our third session for today and the last session for this festival, Taste of Delhi, where Gautam Anandji, Gunjan Goyla, Navina Jaffa and Rana Safi discuss how the food of Delhi is an amalgamation of a wide array of cuisines that are a part of its history and tradition. Exploring the interesting and exciting food of Delhi from its street food to traditional, contemporary to gourmet cuisines, Delhi has it all. Gautam Anandji, whom we have on stage, is an alumni of Modern School, St. Stephen's College, and Cornell University. He began his journey with ITC in 1980 and gathered experience in several big hotels of the industry. He established new food and beverage brands like Otimo, Royal Vega, the India Room, Delhi Pavilion. He also has his own blog, Hindavi Kitchens of India Today. A guiding light in the public-private partnership sector, he has enabled Indian cuisine and experiences at Los Angeles, New York, Frankfurt, Berlin, and St. Petersburg, as well as at the World Economic Forum at Davos. He also spearheaded a multi-chain initiative at Make in India forums at Hanover, Germany, and Mumbai. He's also founding trustee of Cuisine India. He has recently been nominated by Asia Food Congress and Awards for Most Influential Food Industry Professional and Hospitality Superstar. I invite Gunjan Goyla ji to the stage. Her unique contribution to the culinary world is her remarkable ability to combine the ancient secrets of traditional Indian cuisines with modern-day gastronomic insights so that food lovers are able to enjoy an unforgettable dining experience. Having occupied the top slot at ITC hotels for decades, she also developed a special expertise in Indian vegetarian dishes. She was responsible not only for developing exciting new menus, but also to guide and train a whole new generation of chefs at ITC properties throughout the country. She pioneered and was the soul behind the Delhi Ka Khana concept at Dilli Hut. Food fortifications with taste have been her areas of expertise, and she intends to tackle undernourishment among primary school students through her vast experience of food nutrients and tasty cooking. Gunjanji. I invite on stage Dr. Navina Jaffa. Navina has worked on the history of leisure in urban landscapes in which lifestyles, cuisine, and the entire index of intangible heritage play an important role. Her work primarily covers Delhi, Varanasi, Lucknow, Rampur, Agra, and Raigad. With a PhD on socio-economics of cultural heritage, she is a Fulbright scholar, and she contributes as a writer for The Hindu, Indian Express, The Wire, Swaraj, Quint, and Dainik Bhaskar. And we have with us Rana Safi. I request her to kindly come on the stage. Rana ji is an author, columnist, and translator. She has also translated both editions of Asar-us-Sanadid, the seminal work on Delhi's monuments, and from Urdu to English, and 4 accounts from 19th and 20th century Delhi, from Urdu to English. She also runs the popular blog Hazrat-e-Dilli. I request the moderator, Gautam Anandji, to kindly take over the proceedings of this session.
Thank you. शौक थे, तसव्वुर था, बस लिहाज नहीं था. अफसाने थे, किरदार था, बस अल्फाज नहीं था. I thank the organizers, especially Malvika and Anil, to give Delhi cuisine its utterance. For some reason, Delhi's cuisine, and I'm passionate about it, is being cannibalized by the universe which conspired against it to the rest of the country and now to the rest of the world. Nothing better illustrates the fact that the history of civilization is also the history of cuisine and culture. And if that be the moot truth, then some of the best loved foods from India which have made international crossovers have their origin in New Delhi or in older Delhi. Right? We won't get into semantics. So just to give you an example, let's look at the samosa. So the other day, Veer and I were having a chat, and he reminded me that I was factually wrong, which of course is true, that the samosa came from Central Asia. But between you and me, our samosa is far tastier. Right? And it is that samosa which has crossed the entire world. Origin, Delhi. Whether it's New Delhi, Old Delhi, or Older Delhi is. Then let's come to the naan, right? Of course, Hashmi Saab will remind me that he went to Central Asia recently, had the most unappetizing naan or korma, and he says he will never go back and eat there again. Yes, the naan may have come with the Central Asians, because that was an inflection point of change, right? But the naan that has again transported itself into the various parts of the world is an Indian naan, and that Indian naan is from Delhi. Then let's come to the confusion of the salan. The salan is incidentally the first gravy dish that has been recorded in many of the paeans written by Waris Shah and actually by Shah Hussain, who was the patron saint of Lahore. It is also called as do pyaza. So Rana and I had a small discussion on the do pyaza. The do pyaza, according to the Iranian chefs, means 2 onions and lots of lamb or goat or sheep or whatever they eat. According to her, the do pyaza means double the amount of onions and 1 portion of the meat. Now, according to the Punjabis, it means lots and lots and lots of onions and very little meat. But that's not the point. The point is that the do pyaza, or that's the curry that has now transferred itself. And I liked what we wrote this morning about curry and rice, is that eventually we are, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but the reason why the curry has transferred itself internationally is because it spoke the language of the world. Very often our food gets lost in translation, right? And that has been one of the tragedies of Indian cuisine. Then let's talk about the charts, which Gunjan will talk about in detail later. Then there is the fantastic analogy of biryani. Now, there is a great fight between Rana's progeny and the others, between the pulao and the biryani. And then Hashmi Saab came and spoiled the whole thing by saying that he actually had a biryani in Bhopal, which came with the Afghans who came to matrimonial alliances. Veer just confirmed that he had lots of biryani in Bhopal, and they had lots of coriander. But the question is that it was Waris Shah. If you look at Qissa Waris Shah, written 400 years ago, Qissa Waris Shah talks so eloquently about the various varieties of rice that are available. Waris Shah is the man who wrote the Heer, by the way. And yes, he was Punjabi as well. He's listed out all the rices that need to be used for the various preparations that India still continues to use. So we may not have written gastronomy, but if you look at our literature and look at our poetry in the past, you'll find great examples of that. So we'll come to the pulao and biryani, and I'm going to put you on the mat on that. Then we come to the Nargisi kofta, which I did not know actually. Sorry, the korma. The korma, of course, is a much more sophisticated version of the do pyaza. Then we come to the Nargisi kofta. I didn't know that. But it was Veer who reminded me that the Scotch eggs that he loves eating and does not love eating, and the Nargisi kofta was actually the inspiration between the Scotch eggs, which is, and again, as I said, one more thing. Where was its origin? I think in Delhi. Then we come to the rule of the post-partition years, and I know that we don't like to discuss this, but something which really flew like a bird and really became the king of kebabs was the tandoori chicken, right? So much so that all successive prime ministers would take great pride in taking all heads of states to a particular eatery in not so old Delhi, to have tandoori chicken and the naan, right? Then Air India, which for you, you'll be surprised to know, was the #1 airline doing the transcontinental routes between London and New York, put the tandoori chicken on first class passage, right? Now that was a great leap of faith, but that's how the tandoori chicken became top of mind, and once again, thanks to the fact that it carried the language of the world. Then of course comes the infamous butter chicken. Now I know we hate the butter chicken. I know there's lots of confusion about the butter, but there is a lesson that I learned from my own grandmother, that the butter is normally referred to in their language as viscosity. That the viscosity that comes out of either cooking or the natural extraction that comes out of the process of cooking is butter. So you don't need to put lots of butter in the butter chicken. You can actually be patient and make great butter chicken. Then comes a surprise, which is palak paneer. But you know, I've served successive kings from Jordan and Morocco, and of course Saudi Arabia, and they are obsessed with palak paneer. I've had to dole out copious amounts of palak paneer, even illicitly at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Right? That's another story which I will tell Anil in our next St. Stephen's luncheon meeting. Then comes something which I did not do, but Google came back with this. It's called Malai Kofte. Why Malai Kofte? I have no answer, but perhaps Gunjan can brief us on that. And then, of course, came what Hashmi Saab and I agreed completely for a change, was the Delhi Garam Masala. One famous company in Delhi went and packaged the Garam Masala, right? It's 3 letters. I won't say 3 letters. But that Garam Masala just flew the world. So what was originally known as Potli Masala or Bouquet Garni, or the relevant spices that go into these variations of complicated Indian food, that garam masala became an all-time world-besting experience. I mean, you go to a market in Istanbul and they'll give you garam masala. Anywhere in the world, you'll get garam masala. Anyway, for the purposes of our conversation today morning, we will segment the dialogues into 4 eras, because otherwise I'll keep speaking. There are technically 6 eras. The first era, which is ancient, I am completely clueless. I've tried my best to find out what the ancient Delhiite ate. I'm remiss to say that I don't know. But the inflection point of change was the Central Asian early medieval period. Completely changed the way Delhi eats, Delhi lives, and Delhi shops. The prism of change happens not in what you eat, but through the ingredients that you buy. What changed during the Central Asian, that your ingredient list completely changed. So what happened was, you had ready-to-eat breads. The same khamiri roti that you can buy by the dozen started being made available during the era of the Central Asian. Lots of them were bachelors, single men, men of fortune, escaping the cruelty of the Mongols. And then the other thing that started was pret a manger, which is ready-to-eat meats and vegetables. So all these eateries that you were talking about, and I think Vandana ji was talking about the street cuisine. The street cuisine culture really started with the Central Asians. Now the tragedy is that what is on the street remains in the street. Very often we lose what people cook at home, right? So what you see in Delhi today is a lot of street food. A lot of great food has either been lost in translation or during that era of arrivals and departures, which is what many of us call partition and a lot of you call independence. Then we come to New Delhi. Now New Delhi is when it becomes the colonial capital. You saw lots of beautiful photographs. Indian food is now in remission. It's not nice to be Indian. It's not nice to eat Indian food. It's unfashionable. No? Okay, you disagree, fine. But lots of European food is now available. There's a lot of club culture. There is roasts and there are finger chips or whatever club cuisine that there is. But there are some, and the do pyaza then becomes the stew. And a lot of puddings start taking place. So Delhi really becomes a sort of a certain amount of dormancy. I don't know where the food went. And then, of course, comes the period of technology, when India became liberalized and a lot of corporates came in. And then I remember we writing very, very nicely to say, you can eat very well in Delhi. It's almost one of the best eating capitals in the world because everybody came, the Koreans came. Now remember what was happening is, like the diaspora changed, your ingredients changed. So the Japanese wanted their own ingredients, the Koreans wanted their own ingredients. So our complexity changed. And then, of course, came Sheilaji's introduction of the metro, which is the national capital region. And I suspect one of the reasons the current government who runs Delhi is in power is because of the metro. And we won't go into reasons for that. All right. So let's start with the one continuity that is there in spite of all the arrivals and departures, which is Gunjan's community. Your families have lived in Shahjahanabad, which is old Delhi, for centuries, right?
Correct.
And how have you seen the change taking place?
What I hear, the stories I hear from my family is that the times then and the times now are totally different. And as Gautam says, the ingredients change, the lifestyle changes, and along with that, your whole perspective changes about food. I belong to a Baniya community, and my family shifted here in 1842, when Delhi was not what Delhi is today. I remember my mother making chaat at home, which was not as tasty as we would find outside the house. So we all finally decided that we have to buy chaat, may what happen only from the vendors who are coming to the lanes. We were staying in Chandni Chowk for about 2 years and then later shifted to New Delhi. But still, whenever we shifted, whenever we wanted to have chaat, we had to come back to Old Delhi and savor that particular chaat, as he mentions, that it's what the ingredient matters and which is the most important part of any cooking. I would like to tell you here, Gautam, that as you said, you're dividing the food in so many sections. The story I like to tell about my community is, we were the trader community, the Baniyas, or the Vaish, as they would say. It's a distorted form of the word Vanijya, which means business, trading. In other words, we were the richer community of Delhi at that time because we were the money lenders. So now, by lifestyle, the Baniyas would live a very conservative life, not spending money on clothes and other lifestyle, but it would reflect on food. Maybe they would be eating in a silver thali. Maybe they would be eating badam and pista in their curries. And badam ka doodh was a very common thing for us. Having saffron in the milk was very common. My mother would often put a pinch of saffron when the milk was to be boiled in winters. And she would diligently give it to all the children. And any guest, or as the saying was, बनिया कब खर्च करेगा पैसा? क्या तो अपनी बेटी की ब्याह में या land में? So this is the way they would express that how a baniya would live the life. And the food that they have would, of course, would be very, very stylish. They would never have one vegetable. They would have at least 2 to 3 vegetables in their thali. They would have a dal, they would have a paneer. Now paneer was really not a Delhi thing that came. It came post-partition. So this gradually seeped in a baniya thali, which was never present before 1947 or before in early 40s. They would have a puri, which was a fried puri as we call. Bedmi aloo, which is popularly known as Old Delhi, would be an integral part of any baniya cuisine. I like to narrate one incident here. I remember my grandfather eating his food and somebody walked in. And so my grandmother asked the servant not to let him in till the time my grandfather finishes the food. So I asked her, why is that? She says, no, if the senior of the house is eating, nobody should come and disturb, or else he is part of that menu. Sorry, he is part of that food. So either she would invite the guest to come and join for the dinner, or ask them to stay away and not to look at the food. So for years, I was wondering why this kind of behavior from my grandparents. And today I realize when I read my own scriptures, I try to understand what is the sanctity of that food is not to be, either to be shared or not to be shown. So such stories, I used to hear from my mother, from my grandmother, and I read them now, which is a little strange, but that's the way life is. Another thing I like to narrate here is the kind of purity we would have in a vegetarian kitchen. My mother would draw a line in the kitchen which nobody would come across and then get into that area. That was only meant for the cook. And the cook, be it my mother, my grandmother, or a Brahmin who was allowed to enter the kitchen. He had to wear a set of clothes which were washed and dried separately, not to be mixed with the rest of the family. I remember once my mother was giving a pulka to me, which was called chapati, but we were called pulka or a manda in olden times. She would not touch the thali, she would just drop it from the top. I said, why are you doing this? She says, no, I'm not supposed to touch anything in which you're eating because that's contaminated. Now, a little strange to say, but see the height of purity that they would maintain. My idea to bring I want to highlight this point, to say they would not even touch anything which is being cooked. That was called kacha and pakka. Which is cooked would be pakka, and which is uncooked will be kacha. So they would not like to touch both the foods together. Stories like this sound funny, but that's the way the lifestyle was.
Thank you, Gunjan. So I wonder what your grandmother would think of you working for ITC Hotels.
No, she wouldn't be happy, I'm sure about that, that I'm eating all kinds of food and I'm tasting all kinds of food.
So this brings us to a much more. I'm sorry, I'm not decreeing what she said. I mean, those are sensibilities. But that's exactly why Central Asians came and introduced these ready-to-eat chops and breads and brought with them another composite culture which we now call the Sufi culture of South Asia, which has been referred to as the Silsila. I know that you are a devout believer. आपकी बंदगी है उसमें, और आप not only are you a great dancer but a practicer, but you're actually one of those who has carried this entire culture alive. Would you like to tell us something about that nice, wonderful, happy era where everybody was eating and drinking?
My teacher, जिन्होंने पर्दा कर लिया, ख्वाजा हसन निज़ामी सानी, he had a large number of books, and it was so amazing that food constantly was referred to. So the first thing to add to what you were saying, Gunjan, and Central Asian, that जब ये लोग आते हैं, and the usual stuff is that at least 5 people share one plate. But when they came to India and found that there was so much of purity, pollution, and also the idea of vegetarianism, then Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia said that it doesn't matter that whether you eat alone or you eat together, but we have to respect other people to make it more inclusive. So his idea was about inclusivity. So the other very important part in the Sufi tradition became कि जो सबसे अच्छा खाना जो अमीर से अमीर खाएगा वो गरीब से गरीब खाएगा. और हज़रत निज़ामुद्दीन के औलिया साहब के साथ था कि वो 365 दिन रोज़ा रखते थे, except for those few days where you're not allowed to keep certain times, 10 या 12 दिन, which he never kept. और जब रोज़े सुबह की आधी रोटी होती थी जो वो सहरी में खाते थे और आधी बाद में खाते थे रोज़े के बाद. इसी रोटी से मैं एक वाक़यात आपको ज़िक्र करना चाहूँगी अगर आप. Yes, just a very quick thing that he was sitting, Hazrat Nizamuddin was sitting on what was known as Yare Chabutra, and he suddenly said, "एक बादशाह खड़ा है, on the Bauli gate, उसको अंदर लाइए." तो सब लोग गए वहाँ पर ढूंढने के लिए. There was a young boy, and this was written in the diary which was read out to me, so therefore I'm sort of narrating it. And he was actually, his name was Hassan. He was a defeated small-time king from Afghanistan who had come in. फटे पुराने कपड़े थे और वो आए शख्स. तो ख्वाजा साहब ने कहा क्या बचा है लंगर में. And that's another thing that he inspired the Sikhs to actually create the langars, the free community kitchens. So he said, बस रोटी सूखी पड़ी है. तो वो रोटी हमेशा अपनी डुबो के खाते थे, सूखी. He said, लीजिए. And he gave the roti to this boy, saying, लो, ताज पहनो. And this boy, he said, मैं तो ताज मेरा लुट कर मैं यहाँ आया, मैं ताज क्या पहनूँगा. And later on, he got out of the dargah, and there was a Brahman who was called Gangu Brahman, and he had huge fields, and you can't imagine, क्योंकि जहाँ गालिब की मज़ार है उसको अनारकली का बाग लोग कहते थे. तो वहाँ पर खूब सारे खेत थे. तो उन्होंने कहा कि I don't know, I only know how to fight a battle, I don't know how to do anything else. And everybody said, okay, you go to Gangu Brahman and he will give you some work. And so he went and उनको हल चलवाना सिखाया. और एक दिन जब वो हल चल रहा था, the ox actually hit a pot of gold, and he took it and he told his master, here. He said, इतने ईमानदार हो, I am the astrologer for Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and he's looking for somebody to manage his administration in the Deccan. And Muhammad bin Tughlaq, as most of you would know, had left Daulatabad and come back to Tughlaqabad. So Hassan went there, and when he was about to leave, then Gangu Brahman said, "Lo, Taj pehno." And when he went there, he managed very well. And the moment Muhammad bin Tughlaq died, then he remembered the roti. He asserted his independence, and he called himself Gangu Hassan Bahamani, and the Bahamani from Brahman. So just one small anecdote, one other ritual which happens, जब भी लंगर बनता है तो देग बहुत सारे होते हैं. और मान लीजिए मीठा चावल बना, तो इतने सारे देग तो हज़रत के पास नहीं पेश करते. तो एक देग से कुछ चावल निकालते हैं और अंदर जाते हैं, और अंदर जाकर उसको पेश करके और दुआ करके, और फिर उनसे इजाज़त लेते हैं अल्लाह से, हज़रत से. और फिर उस जो मुट्ठी भर जो चावल होता है, हर एक देग में थोड़ा थोड़ा डालकर और फिर लंगर खोलते हैं.
So Rana, I'm going to put you on the mat. So now you are, by accident or by design, the ultimate cuisine destination at Delhi's Sparrow has become Lucknow, right? So everything is all about. So I said at Delhi's Sparrow, the ultimate cuisine destination has become Lucknow, or as the Lucknow people say, Lucknow, right? Lucknow. Anyway, and you know, I've grown up in that culture where I was helping do the ITC's restaurant called Dampuk. Then there again we were. Now I'm very confused, right? So the genesis, I think that the genesis of a lot of your good food, right, may have been Delhi, because eventually it was the sack of Delhi which led to a certain migration. I know that Nizamul Mulk went and established the Deccan Kingdom or the Hyderabad Kingdom, and I know the particular strain that went to Lucknow. Tell me, so like the Punjabis have this great folk story that they came carrying tandoors on their backs, which is completely untrue. Can you imagine walking with a little suitcase full of whatever they had left over and one tandoor on their back? What is the real truth between, do you credit Delhi with anything at all?
Of course, Delhi से ही लखनऊ गए यहाँ से लोग. After the sack of Delhi by Ahmad Shah Abdali and Nadir Shah before that, and then Ahmad Shah Abdali. This was much before 1857, जब लोग यहाँ से, यहाँ का कल्चर ख़त्म हो रहा था, यहाँ के वो भी ख़त्म हो रही थी. The power was declining. People, provincial governors were declaring their independence, and that is the time when the Nawabs of Awadh become more or less independent kings. King तो खैर बाद में बनते हैं, नवाब ही कहते हैं अपने आप को. नायब और से आता है वो लफ्ज़ नवाब. And then they establish their अपने आप को वहाँ पे establish करते हैं as the Nawabs of Awadh, फैज़ाबाद से फिर बाद में लखनऊ. And there being the this thing was कि the Nawabs of Lucknow were Shias. So a lot of Persian influence comes into the cuisine. So the pilau. So खाना जो यहाँ से, लोग तो यहाँ से गए थे, मीर तकी मीर यहाँ से गए, बहुत से लोग यहाँ से गए, and बहुत सी चीज़ें भी यहाँ से गईं. I always say that it is the things that went from Lucknow. What we call today Mughal food was actually, the Mughals did not eat the spicy tomato-based creamy food that we do eat today. They ate a much more practical kind of food, which was more of roasted, because they were warriors. They were always on the...
Are you blaming the Punjabis for it?
So they would, यहाँ से जाके जब लखनऊ ये खाना गया है, खाना यहाँ का अच्छा था, बहुत बढ़िया था, but it was basic. And जो बाद में, it's in the 19th century, beginning of the 19th century, late 18th century, that food starts to get more and more refined. जैसे कोरमा है, नुस्ख़ा शाहजहानी में, अकबरी में कोरमे का कोई जिक्र नहीं है, लेकिन बज़्म आखिर में बहादुर शाह की उस पे दस्तरखान पे कोरमा है. इनका जो अब्दुल हलीम शरद लिख रहे हैं, या जो लखनऊ के जितने भी किस्से हैं, सब पे कोरमा है. And today korma is considered to be a delicacy, मतलब in the sense of कि हम तो आजकल हर रोज़ कोरमा खाने लगे हैं, लेकिन पहले जब हम छोटे थे तो कोरमा सिर्फ मेहमानों के लिए बनता था या शादियों में बनता था. शादी ब्याह, रोज़ जो हम लोग खाते थे वो कलिया खाते थे. कलिया का मतलब any vegetable based mutton dish with हल्दी in it. And जो मैं कहती हूँ हमेशा कि this was एक साजिश थी औरतों की कि बच्चों को सब्जियाँ खिला दें, so that they would add every kind of vegetable into the कलिया. So हम बनाते हैं, चुकंदर का बनाते हैं, शलजम का बनाते हैं, शलजम पत्ते का बनाते हैं, सेम के बीच का, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा, हर चीज़, हर सब्ज़ी का कलिया बन जाता है. So these foods became, इनमें जो एक मिश्रण आया, एक amalgamation हुआ, and culmination happened in Lucknow. And ये जो कोरमा है, recently somebody gifted me with a book from late 19th century, early 20th century, called Khwan Nemat-e-Kala. So that is somebody who's collecting recipes from not only the Nawabi families, but from also the English officers. So that he said कि लोगों को जिनको शौक है बनाने का खाना, they should have access to some English recipes and French recipes also. And after that, then I have another book called Ismati Dastarkhan, which was again a collection of recipes by a lady, Mrs. Nazli from Delhi, from the families of Awadh and Deccan. तो इसमें मैं एक कोरमा, सिर्फ कोरमे को ही लेके, I was examining in it, कि the difference between the korma that is in Khwan Nemat-e-Kala, the कोरमा in Ismati Dastarkhan, और कोरमा जो मैं आज बनाती हूँ. तो अब जब ख्वान नेमत-ए-कला में जो कोरमा बन रहा है, उसमें एक सेर गोश्त में आधा सेर घी है, पाव भर मलाई है, और उसके बाद उसमें मेवा है, एंड वेरी लिटिल स्पाइसेस, एंड थोड़ा बहुत क्या कहते हैं ये गरम मसाला, जिसको हम लोग खुशबू कहते हैं. एक्चुअली गरम मसाला तो कहा ही नहीं जाता था, हम लोग खुशबू कहते थे. जी, तो खुशबू कहते थे. So that, and then when Ismati Dastarkhan, and this is called कोरमा खासगी ज़ाफ़रानी, तो उसमें ज़ाफ़रान पड़ता है. एंड अगेन ज़ाफ़रान जो है वो ऐसे नहीं पड़ता, हम लोग तो आजकल डाल देते हैं, लेकिन ये ज़ाफ़रान आप बलाई में पीसिए, फिर छानिए और फिर डालिए. और जैसे सब्जियां, तरकारियां हैं, सब्जी और तरकारी में भी लफ्ज़ में फ़र्क है. तो अब सब्जियां जब बन रही हैं तो उसमें हल्दी जो है वो इस तरह से नहीं पड़ रही है. ख्वान नेमत-ए-कला में जो दिया हुआ है, आप पहले तेल गरम करिए, उसमें कच्ची हल्दी डालिए, फिर उस तेल को छानिए, फिर उस तेल में आप पकाइए. सो दैट इज़ हाउ हल्दी इज़ इन्फ्यूज्ड इनटू द फूड. बट आजकल हमारे पास तो वक्त है नहीं, तो अब जब मैं कोरमा बनाती हूँ तो मैं तो खैर प्रेशर कुकर में बना लेती हूँ, मलाई तो डालती नहीं, दही डाल देती हूँ. और एक चीज़ का बस मैं ख्याल करती हूँ, ये मेरी दादी ने मुझसे कहा था. माई दादी वॉज अ वेरी गुड कुक. माई मॉम हेटेड कुकिंग, सो आई लर्नड एवरीथिंग फ्रॉम माई ग्रैंड मदर. तो दादी ये कहती थी कि उन्होंने देखा कि बच्चों में से एक मुझे ही इतना ज़्यादा शौक़ था खाना पकाने का, कहती थी बेटा मसाला ऐसे भूनो जैसे दुश्मन का कलेजा। तो मैं आज भी देखिए, आई फील दैट इफ़ यू आर अ लेजी कुक यू विल ड्राउन योर फूड विथ ऑयल एंड विथ गरम मसालास। इफ़ यू आर नॉट यू विल कुक इट इन सच अ वे, आप ऐसे भूनेंगे मसाले को कि जो खाना आप पका रहे हैं उसका मज़ा निखर के आए। माई हस्बैंड इज़ एलर्जिक टू कार्डमम एंड मोस्ट गरम मसाला, सो हमारे घर में गरम मसाला इस्तेमाल ही नहीं होता। द ओनली थिंग आई यूज़ इज धनिया एंड ज़ीरा, अदरक लहसुन। हर खाना जो मेरे घर में बनता है उसकी जो भी खुशबू होती है इट्स ओनली फ्रॉम दीज थिंग्स। शक्ल जो आती है वो भुनने से आती है, और यही चीज़ जो है इज़ वॉट इज़ लैकिंग। एंड ऑल्सो जैसे आपने जिक्र किया था कि हम हर चीज़ में एक ही चीज़ सब एक ही जेनरिक मसाला है, वो हरा मसाला है, लाल मसाला है, सफ़ेद मसाला है, हर चीज़ उसी में पका दी। हर मसाले का, हर दाल का बघार अलग होता था। अरहर की दाल लहसुन से बघारती थी, मसूर की दाल किसी और चीज़ से बघारती थी। हर दाल का मसाला, हर सब्ज़ी का बघार सब अलग होता था। दीज आर थिंग्स विच वी आर फॉरगेटिंग, एंड दैट इज़ वाई जो ये क्विजीन है ये अब एक खिचड़ी बन के रह गई है।
But you still acknowledge, thankfully, that a lot of that food went from Delhi.
जी बिल्कुल,
Do I-
गया यहाँ से निखरा वहाँ।
Do I have another 5 minutes? Okay, so I think this is very interesting. So, my only imposition to you is that let's give Delhi its crew. It's, you know, sometimes the universe conspires to take away all our inheritance, right? And some credit must be given to Delhi. So I've been telling my colleagues in wherever they are, please hashtag Delhi biryani, Delhi korma. I know that you have sensibilities in Lucknow and so on and so forth. So you can also say Lucknow korma, hashtag Delhi korma. Which comes to the next significant era, which and it's very confusing, that era, and that's what we call the partition era. And that partition era is a very dramatic era because lots of arrivals and departures take place. And a large community of people who have a problem with their vowels and consonants and drop. For instance, this entire wave of refugees who incidentally are not a homogeneous community, they may have common ethnicity, mispronounce Saket as Saket. And of course, Maruti is Mruti. And there's a famous prime minister who, I don't want to mention, he does the same, right? The question is, how did this community, which is so language challenged, manage to actually transform the eating and drinking landscape of, and they're a minority actually, between you and me, how did they completely transform the landscape of not only Delhi as we know it, but large parts of India? And probably their food is the mainstay in the UK, right? That is what it confirms to me. You have an opinion on that? Hashtag Delhi.
Delhi, of course, was the capital city, so food did go out from here, and I traveled. And it's my firm belief that food is the easiest way to connect and to make a living. So, जब 1947 के बाद जब आए हैं refugees पंजाब से, पाकिस्तान से, for them the easiest thing to earn money was to start फूड बिजनेस। आपको उसके लिए कुछ ज़्यादा नहीं चाहिए, खोंचा चाहिए, एक ठेला चाहिए। बाद में वहीं से देखिएगा आप तो इस ठेले से इतने बड़े बड़े आज रेस्टोरेंट्स खड़े हो गए हैं। देयर आर डायनेस्टीज ऑफ फूड डायनेस्टीज एक्चुअली फ्रॉम देयर, एंड सो इट्स सो ईजी टू डू इट। एंड देन खाना जो भी अपनाता है उसको वो अपना बनाता है। हाथ जो है, मज़ा जो है वो हाथ में होता है, मसाले में और खाने में नहीं होता है। So then people have taken it and adapted it, and that is how whoever took it, they took it to London, or they took it to France, or they took it to US, or they took it to Lucknow. सबने अपना ऐड किया। दिल्ली से ही खाना लखनऊ गया जो वहाँ निखरा, यहाँ से लंदन गया, यहाँ वो चटनी मैरी बन गया। So it's all, you know, it's an amalgamation of, and food is the easiest thing to add to. अपनाना उसको आप अपनाइए और उसमें आप अपना एक मदद डालिए, and that is how these legends keep growing, and food stories keep growing.
I'll add something here, Gautam.
Very politely sort of absolve the Punjabis of any responsibility, which is a very nice thing.
No, they did take
That's
it.
what they learn. You know, I'm going to. I know that Veer will resist this, but there is a part of Delhi which I don't understand. Okay, and there is what, you know, this is the post-liberalization Delhi, which is called modern Delhi cuisine. And he actually yanked me out of my safety net at ITC Moria, and he said, we have to go, we have to go. So we went all over the city eating modern Delhi cuisine or modern Indian cuisine, right? The first time I screamed and shouted, then he became persistent, then I became quieter. Now I love it, okay? I'm going to ask you to, 1 minute, 1 minute. I know that. This is the best guy in the country, by the way, who's actually put a lot of these brands and he's given us he's given Delhi cuisine utterance, right? He creates lots of cacophony about Punjabi food, but he's married to a Punjabi, so I salvage some of that pride. But please, it's a very important thing. I think we all need to understand. Where did this happen and why did this happen?
I've got a mic, Gautam, yeah. I look at the audience, seems very bad for talk, not staring at you. I was not supposed to do this. I don't know why I'm doing this. I came to watch Gautam. Just a couple of things, I think, points that are worth making about the two great food cities in India are not Lucknow or Hyderabad or whatever else they may claim. They're Delhi and Bombay. They're important because they are the transition points. The only reason any of you know what a dosa is or know what a idli is because people from Karnataka, from Udupi, set up restaurants in Bombay, and all these South Indian dishes travel to the rest of India from Bombay. Similarly, I think many of the dishes that we associate with Indian food were invented or at least transited through Delhi and therefore reached fame. Gautam made the point that the most famous Indian dish in the world is the tandoori chicken. The tandoori chicken, as we know, was probably invented in Peshawar in the 20s or the 30s, but made famous in Delhi in the 1950s by Moti Mahal, which Gautam referred to. Butter chicken, on the other hand, also one of the great Indian dishes of today's cuisine, was invented in Delhi. So was the chicken tikka. These are the dishes the world knows. Delhi never ever gets the credit for them, mainly because of people like Gautam who create restaurants like Bukhara based on Delhi food and pretend they're Northwest Frontier and dress waiters up in ridiculous outfits, yeah? Gautam has given you the example of the samosa, which has many variations in the Middle East, whether you call it the sambusak or some kind of variation, which was originally a flaky baked pastry filled with some kind of mincemeat. It's in Delhi, as Gautam has correctly said. It actually, and that's the other thing about Delhi, the secular nature of the food. This was the dish brought to India by people from the Middle East and Central Asia who were not Hindus. It's the Hindus who made it their own, put potato in it, made it vegetarian, started deep frying it, because Indians are the kings of deep frying. And we created the samosa that's gone all around the world, and that's Delhi too. It never ever gets the recognition. There's a huge controversy about how chaat started, and there are all kinds of stories about emperors asking hakims and all that, which I think are slightly dodgy. So let's not go into that. But it's pretty clear that there's an ancient chaat tradition in Delhi, which went to Lucknow, which went all over. Guys from UP and from Bihar went to Calcutta and created what we call Calcutta chaat, things like puchkas. People from UP who went to Bombay created the Bombay street food tradition, which eventually led to the creation of Bhelpuri, one of the most famous dishes of Indian street food anywhere. Again, I don't want to get into the big controversy about the origins of biryani, except to say that nearly every theory I've read about a foreign origin of biryani is bakwas. Most of them are based on sort of linguistic evidence that, birinj is a Persian word and therefore it came from Iran, etc. Well, if it came from Iran, why is there no rice dish called biryani in Iran? Why do you never find it around there? Persian was the court language of the Mughals, so it's perfectly reasonable for a Persian name to have invented in Delhi. Gautam, I think, inclines to the view that biryani is a Delhi dish. And I personally agree with that. Gautam has a separate view, which is that the pulao of Lucknow has nothing to do with biryani, right? Which is...
I said that the pulao was probably the the preserve of the aristocracy
Yeah.
and the wealthy,
Yeah.
and that the biryani was probably invented
It was the
or
street food, yeah.
on somewhere in the sarais or on the street.
Fair enough. So, but we also agree that the Nizam ul Mulk, who came from the Mughal Empire originally, took biryani to Hyderabad. So I think it's a pretty good case for saying that biryani was also invented in Delhi. So once you got past chaat, the samosa is one example, but jalebi is another example. This is again a Middle Eastern dish from Turkey, Iran, various countries, comes to Delhi and is Indianized into what we call the jalebi. So the role of Delhi as a transit point, as a city that takes influences from all over the world, I'm sure the origin of the biryani had something to do with pulao, which came from Central Asia, transforms them, gives them an Indian character, is probably the most distinguishing and important character of Delhi cuisine. It's this cuisine that's gone around the world calling itself Indian cuisine. And yet, as Gautam points out, Delhi never ever gets the credit it deserves. Sorry, Gautam, didn't talk about molecular medicine.
Rana has an opinion on Lucknow, which I think
लेकिन
we should.
अब मैं दिल्ली की बेटी हूँ.
हाँ, दिल्ली की बेटी. So I think we'll have to do what Trump does, is put the mic off. Right? But anyway, I think we've run out of time. I think Malvika, who's otherwise a very serene and very innocent and very sweet woman, she's looking angry. But I think please give a big round of applause to all our participants and to my friends Veer and Seema for being sporting and for Veer speaking, and it's very wise. And of course, to Mr. Hashmi, who has not spoken, but let me tell you, I've learned a lot from you, Hashmi Saab, and our friendship is for the rest of our life. And he will not charge me for any of those archaeological walks that you take. And I promise to feed you lots of biryani. Right. And so we have a very nice couplet, which of course we will end with. And then of course, Malvika is hosting this fabulous lunch, which she's been working all of the last 1 month for and driving me nuts on that actually. So it says, जिसकी खुशबू से भी उठ जाए फिजा, जिसकी खुशबू से भी उठ जाए फिजा, जिसकी रंगत से भी आ जाए मज़ा, हो नफीस और लजीज हर लुकमा, जिसका जायका हो एक दूजे से जुदा, जिसे खा कर खुश हो जाए मेहमान, बेचाते हैं वही दिल्ली का दस्तरख्वान. So with that, thank you very much. I forgot to mention my senior in college and my superior in various forms, etc., who ticked me off for saying, "Bhai, tum ye kya nihari karte rehte ho?" You know, he gets very upset. So then we had a little bit of knock joke on that. And then when I told him that ye to do pyaza to stew hai, he was very impressed. So we are friends again, right? Thank you. Please join us for lunch.
Ladies and gentlemen, kindly remain seated. We just have 2 more minutes. I request Gayatri Rai ji to kindly come on the stage and propose the vote of thanks. Kindly remain seated for just 2 more minutes.
Thank you all for joining us to celebrate the spirit of Delhi. I would like to thank India International Centre for supporting Words in the Garden. This year, the festival explored Delhi ki Sanskriti. Besides several interesting discussions on literature, history, art, fashion, restoration, photography, and food, the festival screened the movie Ram Kumar, Nostalgic Longing. Prerna Shrimali ji performed Kathak on the poetry of Mir, Ghalib, Dag, and Khusro. Naya Theatre also showcased Rang Sangeet as a tribute to Habib Tanveer. I'd like to thank all our panelists for sharing their valuable insights with us over the course of the festival. IILM University and Banyan Tree School, thank you for being a big support to the festival. I'd like to now invite Ashok Vajpayee ji to please come on stage.
दोस्तों, मीर की दिल्ली, गालिब की दिल्ली, बापू की दिल्ली, संस्कृति की दिल्ली, 4 दिल्लियां तो हो गई। अब अगले वर्ष स्त्रियों की दिल्ली। We are planning births in the garden in which every single participant in terms of talking, showing, performing will be women of Delhi. It is time that we acknowledge that Delhi is not created only by these males who are all over the place. It is more importantly, more deeply, and more creatively imagined and sustained and realized by women of Delhi. So we will next year do come. All the males should come. It doesn't mean that the males should disappear, because they don't, and they should sometimes listen only to women. And there's time, it is in keeping with the tradition of Delhi. After all, दिल्ली शब्द जो है वो स्त्रीलिंग है। बहुत बहुत आभार आप सबका। अगले वर्ष फिर आइए। तब तक इस बार जो हुआ है उसको थोड़ा याद करिए, गुनिए, भूल मत जाइए। शुक्रिया।